All right, let's talk about something every online student has to deal with, the discussion board. In the next few minutes, we're going to turn that confusing assignment into a super clear, straightforward path to a great grade. Let's dive in.
You know the feeling, we've all been there. You're staring at the prompt, you've done the reading, but you're just stuck. You're not sure how to turn your thoughts into something that's going to get you top marks. That feeling, right? Where you're trying to read your professor's mind. Yeah, let's make that a thing of the past.
So here's our game plan. First up, we'll talk about the challenge itself. Then we're going to decode your grade so you know exactly what they're looking for. After that, we'll master your initial post and your peer responses. And finally, we'll dig into the little details that separate a good grade from a great one.
Okay, so let's dive right in with the problem. This whole mystery of what good participation actually means in an online class. You see these phrases all the time in your syllabus, right? Substantive posts, thoughtful engagement. They sound really important, but they can feel so vague. But here's the thing, it's not actually a secret. The answer is hiding in plain sight, in the one document that is your absolute best friend for this assignment, the grading rubric. And that right there brings us to the most important tool you have in your arsenal. You need to think of your rubric less like a report card and more like a blueprint. It is the literal instruction manual for getting an A. So take a look at how a typical rubric actually breaks down the points. See something interesting here? Your big initial post is only one piece of the puzzle. It's worth the exact same as your replies to other students, your use of course materials, and even when you post. Every single part is equally important. So let's start with the part that usually gets the most attention, your initial post. The absolute key here is moving beyond just summarizing what you read and getting into real analysis. Your professor is looking for what the rubric often calls original insight. Now that sounds kind of intimidating, right? But it doesn't mean you have to invent some groundbreaking new theory. It just means you need to connect the dots in a new way. Link a concept from the textbook to a current event or a personal experience or maybe even another idea from the class. Okay, this slide right here shows the difference perfectly. The post on the left is a simple summary. It's correct, but it just repeats an idea from the reading. But look at the post on the right. Now that is analysis. It takes that core idea, applies it to a specific modern example, and explains how the two are connected. That right there, that's original insight. So let's break it down. What's the real anatomy of an excellent post? Well, it's a mix of all these things. You show that you really get the material. You offer that original insight we just talked about. You back it up with examples and evidence, and you put it all together in clear, organized writing. You hit these marks, you're on your way to a top score. All right, so you've absolutely nailed your initial post. High five. But remember, that's only 25% of your grade. Now we've got to master the art of responding to your classmates. This is all about building a real conversation. First things first, tone is absolutely critical. The assignment instructions are super clear. Your goal here is to engage constructively. You can totally challenge an idea, but you have to do it respectfully and professionally. The point is to learn from each other, not to win some kind of debate. And hey, pay close attention to the little details. The prompt clearly says you need to respond to at least 2 peers. And just typing, "I agree" or "great point," yeah, that's not going to cut it. These have to be real, substantial replies. Don't worry, I've got a simple 3-step formula for you that guarantees your replies are always substantive. First, acknowledge their point. Show them you actually read and understood what they said. Second, build on it or offer a respectful counter-perspective. Maybe bring in another idea from the readings. And third, this is the key, ask a smart, probing question that actually pushes the conversation forward. Okay, let's get into the final pieces of the puzzle. These are the things that are so easy to forget, but they can honestly make or break your final grade. Just look at how the rubric scores your timing. Posting everything 5 minutes before it's all due, you're going to get minimal credit. And you know why? Because you're not really having a conversation at that point, you're just checking a box. What earns you those top marks is engaging throughout the week. So what does a good schedule look like? Here's a pro tip for a typical week. Try to get your own post in by Friday. That gives your classmates the weekend to read it, and it gives you Saturday and Sunday to read their posts and think about your replies before that final Monday deadline. This is how you show that consistent participation. And this chart really brings it all home. See,
every single part is worth an equal slice of the pie. 25%. Your initial post, your peer replies, using evidence from the class, and your timing. You just can't afford to ignore any one of these if you're aiming for that A.
So let's wrap this all up into a simple formula. This is your checklist for every single online discussion from now on. You need a strong, analytical initial post. You need at least 2 thoughtful peer replies using that 3-step formula. You back up your points with solid evidence, and you do it all consistently throughout the week. That is how you earn an A. So there you have it. You literally have the exact blueprint for success. The mystery is gone. So the real question now isn't just about how to get the grade. It's about something bigger. How are you going to use these tools to not just pass the class, but to actually make the conversation more interesting and more meaningful for everyone involved?